A few years ago, a successful man, a renowned businessman who had everything that many dream of, decided to take a few days off. He went to a quiet place away from the noise, but something strange happened. He could not rest. He had time, but he had no peace. I had, but I didn't have a break. One night, sitting in front of the sea reflecting, he said, "I don't understand. I have everything, but I feel empty." He visited a doctor, presented him with his symptoms: anxiety, trouble sleeping, chest pressure. After several exams, everything turned out fine. One day the doctor asked him, "When was the last time your soul rested?" The man stood in, started crying and said, "I don't remember, doctor." Days later, someone told him something that marked his life. Rest is not found in one place, it is found in one person, and that person is Jesus. That man began to seek God, and for the first time in years, he was able to sleep in peace. There are people who are tired but cannot rest. They sleep but do not rest. They live but do not enjoy. Welcome to this series, Healing the Soul of the International Rescue Project. We will share our last lecture entitled Rest in Your Presence. In this series, we have shared three very important topics. We saw wounds from the past. We addressed the issue of depression produced by the excess of the past, of a past that does not heal. In addition, we analyze fears of the future, the anxiety that the excess of the future produces in a person. We saw the weight of the present, the stress of the daily race of life without rest, and came to the conclusion, nothing completely heals until the soul rests in God. Science has confirmed something powerful: spirituality impacts mental health. In an official article from Harvard University School of Medicine in the United States, based on their research, they determined that prayer can reduce stress and negative emotions. People with spiritual lives have less depression and anxiety. Spiritual practice improves emotional well-being and inner peace. Spiritual participation is associated with fewer suicides and higher quality of life. And your soul was not designed to live without God. The real human problem is not just anxiety, it's not just a stress, it's spiritual disconnection. The human being has fallen into depression, stress, constant anxiety, accelerated thoughts, inner emptiness, emotional fatigue, loss of purpose, and all this due to spiritual disconnection. The story that occurred in a distant country is told. The sun was just beginning to set, and in the father's house everything was in order. There was bread, there was provision, there was peace. But one of the children inside the house did not feel complete and fixed his gaze towards the horizon. His eyes did not reflect gratitude. They reflected concern. "I want more," he said. "I want my life. I want to live. I wasn't at war, I wasn't in crisis, but I was disconnected inside. And so one day he asked for his inheritance, not because his father had died, but because he no longer wanted to live there. In the presence of his father, the father looks at him, does not stop him, does not force him, lets him go. Because true love does not control, it allows you to decide. The son leaves and begins the journey of his dreams. At first everything seemed better. There's noise, there's friends, there's freedom. But what he didn't know is that he wasn't looking for freedom. He was actually running away from his father. Little by little the noise turns to silence, friends disappear, money runs out. And one day, he ends up where he never imagined, in a field feeding pigs. The one who had everything, now he has nothing. The one who lived in a house now lives in need. The one who had identity, now he has a void in his heart. And there, in the midst of pain, hunger, and abandonment, something happens. It says Luke 15 and 17. Coming to himself, he did not return to his house immediately. First he came to his senses, reflected on everything that had happened in his life, realized something devastating. It wasn't the lack of things. What she had was the lack of her father. She missed his love, his tenderness, his advice. He missed his father. Today many are living exactly like this, with life but without purpose. With achievements but without peace, surrounded by people but empty inside. They are not lost due to lack of capacity. They are lost due to spiritual disconnection. And this leads many to lower themselves like animals by disconnecting from God and fleeing His presence, falling into vices, addictions, sorcery, lust, number of sins. But this story is going to take an extraordinary turn as the son rises without pride, without excuses, without strength, but with a decision, with a plan in mind. Return to the presence of the Father. He said, I will get up, I'll go. My father suddenly feels a force inside him that makes him stand up. Everything is born of a decision. The decision allowed that force to enter her being, and she ran to look for her father. While the son is still far away, the father sees him, does not wait, does not doubt, runs towards him, because the love of God is not passive. It's urgent. The son wants to talk. Father, Father, I have sinned. But before I finish, the father already embraces him. He did not hold him accountable. He did not remind him of mistakes. He did not reproach him. He restored him. He put a new dress on him. He gave him a ring. He returned his identity, because for the father, he never stopped being his son. The problem was never the distance. It was the disconnection. Dear friend and dear friend, today you can be at home, but far from God. You can be in church, but empty. You can apparently have life but disconnected, and that wears out the soul. That breaks inside, and you have to understand that God is not angry with you. He is waiting for you. And He's not just waiting for you, He's running towards you. Today you don't need more money, more achievements, more distractions. Do you need to go back to the Father? The son thought he had lost everything, but in reality, the only thing he really needed to get back was the presence of his father. Because when you go back to God, you don't just go back home, you go back to who you are. This is the reality of the human being. Are you separated from God? Jesus says in John 1:55, I am the vine, you the branches, he who abides in me and I in him. This bears much fruit, because apart from me, you can do nothing. There was a time when man walked with God. There was no anxiety, no emptiness. There was no fear, because there was a special connection, but something changed. Humanity decided to separate because of a bad decision. Seek your own path, trust your own strength, live without depending on God. And since then, we've tried to fill that void with everything. We've tried to fill it with success, with money, with relationships, with distractions. But nothing has been enough, because the problem was never the external, it was the disconnection from the source. Jesus said it clearly, separated from me, you can do nothing. And look, I'm not more technology, more advances, more knowledge, but also more anxiety, more depression, more emptiness, because we have learned to live connected to everything but God. The human being is not failing due to lack of capacity, he is failing due to lack of connection. We are like a branch that has been cut off, which tries to bear fruit without being attached to the tree. We may look like alive for a while, but inside we are drying up little by little. And the biggest problem of humanity is not sin itself, it is separation from the source of life. 1 John chapter 3 says that everyone who remains in Him does not sin. Jesus doesn't want to condemn you. Jesus wants to restore that connection. Therefore, He said, stay in me, because the solution is not to try more, it is to reconnect. And today Jesus tells you, the vine returns. Come back to the source, come back to me. Today you must decide to stop living disconnected, return to Jesus and remain in Him, because only in His presence is there eternal life. The world offers you many things, but only Jesus gives you life separated from Him. Nothing with Him, everything makes sense. The problem is that many are afraid to try it with Jesus. They are afraid to return to Him. There's shame, but I want to share this story with you. The story is told of a young woman who one day decided to leave home. Not because they didn't love her, but because she wanted to try her own life. He dreamed of the big city, of freedom, of independence. But what seemed like an adventure ended up becoming a nightmare. Life wasn't what she imagined. Wrong decisions led her down a dark path. She ended up trapped in prostitution, surrounded by drugs, empty, broken, lost. She spent the years and one day alone in her room, without strength, without dignity, without hope. He thought of something he hadn't thought of in a long time: his home, his parents. There was a problem. I didn't know if they still loved her. I didn't know if they had forgiven her. Fearful and ashamed, with his heart in his hand, he decided to call. The phone rang, but no one answered. Then, leaving a voicemail, he said, "Mom, Dad, it's me." In his broken voice, "I know it's been a long time. I know I failed. I know I hurt them. Tomorrow I'll take the train through the town. If you have forgiven me, please hang a white handkerchief at the station. If not, I'll understand. I'll go my way." The next day, she goes on the train, her heart beats fast, her hands start to shake. He doesn't want to look, he just thinks, and if there's nothing, and if they don't want me anymore, the train starts to slow down. It's coming to the station. She closes her eyes, takes a deep breath, and slowly looks out the window. And what the broken woman sees inside, there wasn't one handkerchief, there were hundreds. The whole station was covered in white. From the entrance to the town to the station, there were white sheets, white cloth, white handkerchiefs. Because his parents had heard the message and talked to all the neighbors. They asked for sheets, they asked for fabrics, and they filled the whole road with white, meaning, "No, we just forgive you, we are waiting for you." She couldn't take it anymore. She gets up, gets off the train, runs to look for her parents, and when she saw them, there was no reproach, there was no rejection, there were hugs, there were tears, there was restoration, and so is God with you. Maybe you drifted away. Maybe you failed, maybe you feel unworthy, and you think, could God still accept me? But God didn't put a single handkerchief. He filled the whole way, and the cross is that message: I forgive you, come home, because away from Him you get lost, but when you come back He restores. God is waiting for me to punish you. He's waiting to hug you today. No matter how far you have gone, the path is still full of grace. You don't need an easy life, you need a life more connected to God. Everything in your life is out of place when God is not at the center. But when Christ enters, anxiety lowers the heart, the soul is ordered. Get some rest. Jesus is not an idea, it is a living rest. Close your eyes and think for a moment. How long have you been tired? How long does it take to charge what you cannot control? Today Jesus tells you, come to me, no tomorrow, no. When you are better today, if today you want to rest in God where you are, surrender your burdens to Him. When God takes His place in your life, everything else finds its place. You don't need to escape your life, you need to find God within it. Today I'm extending an invitation to you to join me in calling upon Jesus. I've chosen this day to reconcile with the Father, embrace His forgiveness, and renew my connection with the One whose love for me has never wavered. No matter the distance you've traveled, dear friend, there's always a radiant path leading back home. This is an invitation to find rest in His presence and immerse in the profound love Jesus has for you. May God bless you abundantly and guide you always.